My name is Juliana Whitmore. I'm 29 years old. And the story I'm about to tell you didn't start at an airport gate, or in Mexico, or even with a screaming phone full of missed calls. It started in a house in Riverside, California, where love was handed out like a limited edition item, reserved for one person, displayed proudly, and treated like it could never be wasted on someone like me. Growing up, our family had two daughters. But in our home, we didn't live like two daughters existed. There was Erica Whitmore, my sister, 9 years older, 9 years louder, 9 years more important. And then there was me, Juliana, the one who learned how to shrink. If you've never been the extra child, it's hard to explain what it does to you. It's not one big moment. It's 1,000 small ones that stack up quietly until you don't even notice you're carrying them. Every surface in our house told the same story. A framed photo of Erica in her first ballet recital costume, smiling like she already knew she'd win at life. A trophy with her name spelled wrong. Somebody had carved Erica, and my mother displayed it anyway like it belonged in a museum. A lopsided pottery bowl she made in third grade sat on a shelf for years, treated like sacred art. My things didn't get shelves. My things got corners, hand-me-downs. The clothes Erica had outgrown. The toys Erica had abandoned. The pink bicycle with a wobbly wheel that squeaked like it was begging to be put out of its misery. The Barbie dolls with hair hacked off in jagged chunks from whatever phase Erica had been in when she decided they were boring. I learned early that asking for new things didn't make you brave in my family. It made you annoying. So I adapted. I became good at being quiet, good at reading the room, good at slipping out of the way before anyone could accuse me of making it about myself. And if I'm honest, I didn't even realize that wasn't normal until I got older and watched other families treat their kids like kids. Like they mattered just because they existed. In our house, existence didn't earn you anything. You had to perform. And Erica performed like she was born on a stage. By the time I hit middle school, she was already the center of every conversation, even when she wasn't home. It was always Erica's grades, Erica's scholarships, Erica's future. Erica's potential was treated like a family investment. Mine was treated like a question mark nobody wanted to deal with. High school came and went in a blur. I stayed out of trouble, got decent grades, tried not to need too much. When I wasn't at school, I was either helping around the house or doing my best impression of a person who didn't require emotional attention. Because emotional attention in my family came with a price. And I never had the currency. Then Erica moved out. And for a moment, just a thin, trembling moment, I thought maybe the air in the house would change. She left for college on a full academic scholarship, and my parents talked about it like she'd been personally selected by the universe. I remember standing in the hallway the day she carried her boxes out. My mom was crying. My dad kept clapping Erica on the shoulder like she'd just enlisted and saved the country. Nobody looked at me. But when Erica's car pulled away and the driveway finally emptied, something inside me lifted. Maybe now they'll notice me, I thought. Maybe now it'll be my turn to feel like a daughter. I didn't know how naive that hope was. Because even with Erica gone, she didn't disappear. She expanded. Our dinners became updates about Erica. Our weekends became phone calls with Erica. My mother would set her phone on speaker and wander around the kitchen, laughing at Erica's stories like they were the highlight of her day. And I would sit at the table, eating in silence, waiting for a question that never came. How was school, Juliana? How are you doing? Anything. Sometimes I would start to speak, just to test it, just to see if I could matter for 5 seconds. And my dad would do this thing where he'd nod without looking at me, like he was humoring a background commercial. Uh-huh, he'd say. Then he'd go right back to Erica. When Erica visited, the house transformed into a shrine. My mom would cook her favorite meals. My dad would clean the grill, even if Erica wasn't planning to eat anything grilled. Erica would sit in the living room, and my parents would lean toward her like she had gravity. And I would sit in the same room, feeling like a chair somebody forgot to remove. Then came the afternoon that changed the direction of everything. It was a sunny Saturday. I remember because the light came in too bright, cutting across the living room like it was trying to expose every truth we kept pretending wasn't there. I was on the couch with a textbook, something science-related, trying to stay focused, trying to build a future quietly, the way I always had. The front door flew open. Erica burst in like a firework. "Mom, Dad," she squealed. I looked up instinctively, heart doing that stupid, hopeful thing again. She was glowing. Not metaphorically, she literally looked like someone had turned the brightness up on her face. Her hair was perfect. Her nails were perfect. She had that kind of energy that makes other people feel like they should clap just for witnessing her. "I'm engaged," she announced, holding up her hand. A ring caught the sunlight and flashed like it was screaming for attention. Derek proposed last night at the Getty Museum. You would have thought she'd announced she'd found the cure for cancer. My mom dissolved instantly, hands to her mouth, eyes filling, voice trembling like she'd been waiting her whole life to hear those words. My dad whooped, actually whooped, like a teenager at a concert. He pulled out his phone and started calling relatives like the news couldn't survive another minute trapped inside him. Erica laughed and spun in the entryway, letting them react to her like she was a headline. And me? I sat there with my textbook open on my lap, staring at the ring like it was a symbol of something I didn't have a name for yet. Because it wasn't just a ring. It was proof. Proof that Erica would always be the main event. Even now. Even when she didn't live here. Erica turned to me, eyes bright, cheeks flushed. And Juliana, she said, like she'd just remembered I existed, you'll be my maid of honor, right? The room went quiet in that strange way it does when everyone expects you to say the right thing. My stomach twisted. Because maid of honor in my family didn't mean honor. It meant work. It meant being useful. It meant playing a role in Erica's story. I forced a smile anyway, because that's what I was trained to do. Sure, I said, congratulations. My mom grabbed Erica and cried harder. My dad hugged her and kept saying how proud he was, how perfect this was, how Derek was such a catch. Erica basked in it like sunlight. And then, because old habits are hard to kill, I did what I always did when the spotlight got too bright. I slipped upstairs to my room. Quietly, without drama, without slamming a door. I sat on my bed, still holding the edge of that smile like it might crack if I let go. Downstairs, I could hear them laughing, talking over each other, already planning, already building the next year of their lives around Erica's wedding. No one called up to check on me. No one noticed I was gone. They never did. And that's the thing about being invisible for so long. Eventually, you stop asking to be seen. You just start waiting for the moment you'll finally have enough. And that moment was closer than I realized. The year after Erica got engaged, our house stopped being a home and became a command center. Not for my future, not for my schooling, not for anything that had my name attached to it. For Erica's wedding. It was like the word wedding cast a spell over my parents, like it made them forget budgets, logic, and the fact that they were still two working adults with a mortgage and a life that had to continue after one single day. Every evening, the kitchen table was covered in paper. Venue brochures, sample invitations, swatches of fabric that looked identical to me, but somehow mattered deeply to my mother. Lists of must-haves that grew longer every time Erica called. And Erica called constantly. I could always tell when she was on the phone because my mom's voice changed. Softer, higher. Like she was talking to a celebrity, not her own daughter. "Sweetie, of course," she'd coo, even if Erica was asking for something insane. "Yes, honey, whatever you want." I learned to walk quietly past the kitchen so they wouldn't remember I existed and ask me to do something. Because in a house like ours, the second they looked at you, it was usually to assign you a task. One night, about 6 months into the planning, I came home from my shift at Target. My feet hurt. My hair smelled like the stockroom, dust and cheap perfume from busted bottles. My brain was already counting the hours I had left to do homework before I passed out. But as soon as I stepped inside, I heard their voices. Low, tense. I paused in the doorway, still wearing my red vest. My parents were hunched over the kitchen table like they were planning a heist. "We'll need to take out a second mortgage," my dad said, dragging a hand through his thinning hair. "The venue alone is $40,000. My mom sighed like he'd just said something sad but necessary. "I know, Thomas," she murmured, "but it's Erica's special day. We can't disappoint her. She's only getting married once." I stood there frozen. Second mortgage. On our house. For one day. One day where people would eat chicken or fish, dance for a few hours, and go home. One day that wouldn't change Erica's marriage, wouldn't change her life, but would change my parents' future forever. My throat tightened. I wanted to step forward. I wanted to say, "Are you out of your minds?" But I already knew how that scene would end. My opinion didn't have weight in our house. It never had. So I did what I always did. I swallowed it. I walked upstairs quietly, took a shower, and sat on my bed staring at my ceiling until my chest stopped burning. The wedding came faster than I expected, like the whole year got vacuumed up by Erica's planning, and suddenly we were there, standing in a country club my parents couldn't afford, watching Erica glide down the aisle like a movie star. She looked stunning, I'll give her that. A perfectly fitted gown, Vera Wang, of course, $8,000 worth of white fabric, and the kind of confidence you get when you've never doubted your place in the world. My parents beamed like they'd built her with their own hands. and I stood to the side in a bridesmaid dress I paid for myself. $300 of stiff pastel fabric, pinching under my arms, pretending I wasn't a prop in someone else's fairy tale. When the photos happened, my mom kept adjusting Erica's veil, wiping imaginary dust from her shoulder, fixing her hair. No one adjusted me. No one asked if my shoes fit, if I was okay, if I needed water. In every group photo, I held my smile like it was part of the dress. Mandatory, decorative, and not entirely mine. After the wedding, everyone kept saying the same thing. Perfect, beautiful, like a dream. But when I looked at my parents, behind their smiles, I saw something else. Exhaustion, stress. The kind of tension you get when you're trying to pretend you didn't just gamble your entire financial stability on a centerpiece arrangement. 3 months after Erica came back from her honeymoon in Bali, yes, Bali, she dropped her next announcement like it was nothing. We were at Sunday brunch at my parents' house. Erica and Derek sat at the table like royalty. My mom kept refilling Erica's coffee before her cup was even half empty. Erica dabbed her lips with a napkin and said casually, "I've decided to be a stay-at-home wife." I blinked. Derek, sitting beside her in a crisp button-down, nodded like this was the most normal thing in the world. "Derek makes enough at his law firm," Erica continued. "I don't need to work." I watched my parents' faces carefully. For a fraction of a second, I saw worry, real, unfiltered worry, flicker behind their eyes. They'd just buried themselves in debt for her wedding. Now she was cutting off her own income like it was an optional accessory. But then my mom's expression snapped back into place. Supportive, warm, devoted. "That's wonderful, sweetie," she said, reaching across the table to squeeze Erica's hand. "If that makes you happy, we support you completely." My dad nodded too, because in our family, support was a word with a very specific direction. It flowed toward Erica like a river. I stared at my plate and stabbed a piece of omelet until it fell apart. I didn't say anything. Not because I didn't have words, because I had learned what words cost me. 6 months later, Erica announced she was pregnant with twins. I was working a closing shift at Target when my phone buzzed with the family group text, the one I was technically included in, but mostly ignored. My mom had sent an ultrasound photo with what felt like 50 exclamation points. When I got home, my parents were still awake. My mom was practically vibrating. My dad kept shaking his head like he couldn't believe the world had blessed him personally. "Twins, Juliana," he kept saying. "Can you believe it? 2 grandbabies." I could believe it. I could also believe what would come next, because patterns don't change in families like mine. 2 weeks later, I came downstairs around midnight for water and heard their voices drifting from the dining room. And that tone, the low, serious tone, immediately made my stomach drop. "We should help them with a house," my mom was saying. "That condo is too small for twins. There's a beautiful 4-bedroom in Costa Mesa, right near that good school district." My dad made a sound of agreement. "We could cover the down payment. It's about $60,000, but it's an investment in our grandchildren's future." I stood on the stairs, my hand gripping the railing so hard my knuckles hurt. $60,000, on top of the wedding debt. For Erica and Derek, 2 adults with a combined income that probably tripled what my parents made, even with Erica retiring. This time, I couldn't swallow it. I walked into the dining room, still wearing my Target uniform like armor. "Are you serious right now?" My voice came out sharper than I intended, but I didn't care. They both looked up like I'd startled them, like they'd forgotten I lived there. My mom blinked. "Juliana, honey, you're drowning in debt from the wedding," I said, my voice shaking. "And now you want to give them $60,000 for a house?" My dad's jaw tightened. "This doesn't concern you." "It concerns me when you're risking our home for Erica's life upgrades," I shot back. "Derek is a lawyer. They can afford their own down payment." My dad's face hardened, the way it always did when I stepped out of my assigned role. "Juliana," he said, slow and stern, "this is what family does. We support each other." I laughed, one short, bitter sound that even surprised me. "Support goes both ways, doesn't it?" I said. "Or does it only flow in one direction in this family?" My mom stood up, her expression going rigid. "That's enough," she snapped. "We are not discussing this with you." Not discussing. Not hearing. Not seeing. The familiar wall slammed down right in front of me again. I left the room, with my hands trembling, heart pounding like I'd just committed a crime by stating the obvious. 2 months later, Erica and Derek moved into their new house in Costa Mesa. 4 bedrooms. A pool. A mortgage my parents helped make possible with money they didn't actually have. When the twins were born, Cameron and Connor, on a Tuesday in March, my parents became people I barely recognized. They were obsessed, constantly at Erica's house, constantly posting pictures, constantly talking about first smiles, first outfits, first everything. Meanwhile, I was finishing my senior year of high school, trying to figure out how I was going to afford college. One evening in April, I stood in front of my parents in the living room, gathering courage like it was something I had to physically dig out of my chest. They were sitting together on the couch, looking at photos of the twins on my mom's iPad. "Hey," I said, voice cautious. "I wanted to talk about college." My mom murmured without looking up. I swallowed. "I got into UC Irvine and Cal State Fullerton." That got my dad's attention. Barely. "But I'm going to need help with tuition," I continued. "Financial aid covers some, but—" "We can give you about $8,000 a year," my dad interrupted. I blinked. $8,000? My voice came out small. "The tuition alone is $15,000, not counting—" My mom finally looked up. Her eyes had that practiced softness that usually meant she was about to say something that sounded kind, but wasn't. "We'd love to give you more, sweetie," she said. "But with the wedding loan and helping Erica with the house, that's what we can manage. You'll need to figure out the rest. Scholarships, student loans, get a job." 8,000. Less than a quarter of 1 year of Erica's wedding. Less than a fraction of the down payment they handed over like it was nothing. I felt my throat close. But I nodded anyway. Because nodding was what I did. "Okay," I whispered, "thanks." And that night, lying in bed, staring at my ceiling, I understood something with a cold clarity I'd been avoiding for years. In my family, I wasn't a daughter. I was a backup plan. And soon they were going to start using me like one. I ended up choosing Cal State Fullerton. Not because it was my dream school, or because I felt particularly drawn to it, but because it was cheaper, closer, and the only option that didn't make my chest tighten with fear every time I thought about money. I lived at home to save on rent. I worked. A lot. I picked up shifts wherever I could, eventually landing steady hours at a diner called Rose's Cafe, the kind of place that smelled like burnt coffee and grease no matter how often they wiped the counters. I wore black sneakers that never fully lost the smell of fryer oil, and my hands were always dry from sanitizer. Between classes during the day and work at night, my weeks blurred into 16-hour stretches that ended with me collapsing into bed too tired to even think. But at least I was moving forward. At least I was trying to build something that belonged to me. That illusion lasted about 3 months. The first time it happened, I'd just come home from a brutal Friday night shift. My calves were screaming, my head was pounding, and all I wanted was a shower and sleep. I pushed open the front door and stopped short. Erica was in the living room. The twins, now almost 3, were running in circles around the coffee table, shrieking like sirens. One of them had a cracker mashed into the carpet. The other was banging something plastic against the wall. "Oh, thank God, Jules," Erica said, already grabbing her purse. "I'm desperate for a break." I blinked. "What?" "Derek and I haven't had a date night in forever," she continued breezily, like she was asking me to borrow a sweater. "You don't mind watching the boys for a few hours, right?" Before I could even process what was happening, she was halfway out the door. "Erica, I just got off work." "You're the best," she said, not looking back. The door closed. I stood there in my grease-stained uniform, staring at Cameron and Connor as they screamed and chased each other like tiny tornadoes. "What the hell?" I muttered. My mom appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "Your sister works so hard taking care of those boys," she said. "This is what family does, Juliana." "I work hard too," I said, my voice cracking. "I just finished an 8-hour shift. I have homework." She waved it off like it was nothing. "It'll be good practice for when you have your own children someday." As if that settled it. That night, I microwaved mac and cheese for dinner while breaking up fights over toys and trying to memorize formulas for an exam I barely had the energy to care about anymore. I told myself it was a one-time thing. It wasn't. It became a pattern. Every Friday, every Saturday, sometimes Sundays too. Erica would drop the twins off with excuses that always sounded reasonable if you didn't stop to think about them. Errands, exhaustion, date nights, just needing an hour. An hour always turned into 4, sometimes 6. My parents treated it like a given, like my time was a shared family resource, not something that belonged to me. If I protested, I was labeled difficult. If I complained, I was selfish. One Saturday, after a week of midterms that left me barely functional, Erica dropped the twins off again and disappeared before I could even take my shoes off. I stood in the living room, watching my parents settle in like this was normal. "This isn't fair," I said, my voice trembling. "I'm exhausted. I work. I'm in school full-time, and now every weekend is gone too. When do I get to have a life?" My dad didn't even look up from his newspaper. "Your sister needs help," he said. "You should be grateful to spend time with your nephews." "What about what I need?" My voice rose despite my best effort. "I'm running myself into the ground." My mom sighed, that familiar, disappointed sigh that always made me feel 12 years old. Don't be selfish, Juliana, she said. Erica has 2 children. You don't understand how hard that is. Something in me wilted. There was no winning here, so I stopped trying. Classes during the week, work at night, babysitting on weekends. My life became a loop. Friends drifted away because I was always tired, always busy, always unavailable. Dating was a joke. I barely had time to shower, let alone build a relationship. The closest thing I had to a social life were the other servers at Rose's and a couple of people from my study group who I'd sometimes sit with in the library at midnight. By the time I graduated, I felt hollowed out. The ceremony was in the spring. I wore a cap and gown that felt heavier than it should have. My parents didn't come. They were at something important for the kids. I stood there after my name was called, looking out at the crowd, realizing no one was clapping for me. I didn't cry. I'd cried enough over the years. After graduation, I landed a full-time job as a junior account coordinator at a small advertising agency in Anaheim. The pay wasn't amazing, but it was enough to breathe. I moved into a tiny studio apartment in Garden Grove, peeling linoleum, thin walls, and a window that looked directly into a neighbor's kitchen. It was perfect. For the first time in my life, I had a door I could close. But Erica's expectations didn't stop just because I moved out. If anything, they intensified. She had a 3rd child, a daughter named Sophia, and suddenly she needed help constantly. 3 nights a week, sometimes 4. Just until things settle, she'd say. Things never settled. I was running on fumes. Every time my phone buzzed with Erica's name, my stomach dropped. I needed a break, a real one. So I did something I'd never done before. I planned something just for myself. A cheap beach motel in Oceanside, nothing fancy. 3 nights. An ocean view. The kind of place where the walls were thin, but the sound of the waves made up for it. I announced it during Sunday dinner, bracing myself for pushback. I'm taking a few days off, I said, going to the beach. To my shock, my mom's face lit up. That's wonderful, honey, she said. You deserve a break. My dad actually smiled at me, really smiled. Good for you, he said. You work hard. I nearly dropped my fork. Were they seeing me? For the first time in years, hope flickered. The day came. I packed my beat-up duffel bag, boarded the train south, and felt the tension drain out of my body mile by mile. When I stepped onto the beach in Oceanside and saw the ocean stretch endlessly in front of me, I almost cried. The motel was dated. The carpet smelled faintly of salt and age, but the view was everything. I breathed. I ate fish tacos by myself. I walked barefoot in the sand. I went to bed that night thinking, maybe things are changing. I didn't know yet that my family had already found a way to follow me. I woke up the next morning to the sound of waves and sunlight slipping through the thin curtains. For a moment, I didn't remember where I was. Then it hit me, and my chest loosened. No screaming kids, no buzzing phone, no one needing anything from me. Just the ocean. I took my time getting ready, something I almost never did. I showered without rushing. I wrapped myself in the motel's scratchy towel and stood by the window, watching surfers dot the water like silhouettes. I felt light. I went out for breakfast at a little shack down the street. Fish tacos, a coffee that wasn't burned to death, and a table where no one interrupted me. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt like I could breathe. By late afternoon, the sky had started to soften into those warm pinks and oranges that make everything feel temporary and gentle. I walked back to the motel, thinking about a long bath, maybe reading until I fell asleep early. Then I heard voices. Familiar voices. Surprise! I froze. My key card hovered inches from the door as my stomach dropped straight through the floor. Standing outside the room next to mine were my parents, Erica, Derek, and all 3 kids, Cameron, Connor, and Sophia, surrounded by luggage. What are you doing here? I asked, my voice barely holding together. My mom beamed, like this was the best idea she'd ever had. We couldn't let you be alone on your vacation, she said, so we decided to make it a family trip. I noticed immediately that their room was bigger. Nicer. It had a kitchenette, a balcony. Of course it did. Before I could say anything, Erica was already steering the twins toward me. The boys have been so excited to see the ocean, she said. Derek and I are going to take a walk on the beach. Actually enjoy the sunset. And I need to run to the grocery store, my mom added. We'll be back in an hour or 2. Just like that, they were gone. All of them. Leaving me standing there with 3 overexcited children tugging at my clothes and whining about being hungry. My vacation evaporated in seconds. The next 3 days were a blur of chaos. The twins were completely unhinged, hyped up on sugar, ocean air, and freedom. They tore through my tiny room like it was a playground. Cameron pulled the curtain rod clean out of the wall. Connor knocked over the lamp, shattering it into a dozen pieces. And sweet little Sophia, bless her heart, flushed an entire apple down the toilet, clogging it beyond anything I knew how to fix. The motel manager was sympathetic but firm. Since the damage happened in my room, the bill was mine. Between the lamp, the curtain rod, and an emergency plumber, I was out nearly $400, money I didn't have to spare. Meanwhile, Erica and Derek were living their best lives. Nice dinners, sunset walks, sleeping in. Every time they asked for just a little help, it turned into hours. By the third morning, Connor climbed into my bed at 6 a.m., bouncing on my ribs like a trampoline. I snapped. "You're tired?" I said later that day when Erica complained about the drive. "You've been on vacation. I've been chasing your kids for 3 days straight." "They're your nephews and niece," Erica shot back. "Family helps family." "When does anyone help me?" I exploded. "When does anyone in this family care about what I need?" My mom started crying. Erica slammed her door. My dad tried to smooth things over and somehow still took Erica's side. That night I packed. The next morning, I caught the first train back to Garden Grove. As the coastline disappeared, something inside me hardened. This couldn't continue. I didn't know how yet, but I knew I was done. I barely slept the night I got back from Oceanside. My body was exhausted, but my mind was on fire. Anger has a way of doing that. Once you stop suppressing it, it demands to be felt all at once. The next morning, I woke up with a clarity I'd never had before. I was done. Halfway through packing a suitcase, more out of instinct than logic, my phone rang. "Mom." I stared at it until it stopped ringing. Then it rang again. I answered. "Juliana," she said, her voice tight. "We need to talk about what happened at the beach." "I can't do this anymore," I interrupted. There was a pause, a sharp inhale. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I'm done being the family's free babysitter," I said. "I'm done putting everyone else first. I'm 25 years old, and I don't have a life because I'm too busy living everyone else's." "That's ridiculous," she snapped. "Family helps family." "I need space," I said, my voice shaking but steady. "I need to figure out who I am when I'm not just Erica's backup parent." The conversation went downhill fast. Mom called me selfish. Dad took the phone and called me ungrateful. Erica sent me a barrage of texts calling me a terrible aunt. I stood my ground. For the first time in my life, I said no and didn't take it back. The next few months were tense. I ignored babysitting requests. I muted family chats. I went out with coworkers after work and learned what it felt like to laugh without checking the time. I started dating a man named Alex, a graphic designer I met at a coffee shop. He listened when I talked. He didn't expect anything from me except honesty. For a while, life felt normal. Then my birthday came up. A week before, Mom called. "We want to do something special for you," she said. "Come over for dinner. The whole family will be there." I hesitated. Alex told me not to go. But hope is stubborn. When I arrived, the house was packed. Aunts, uncles, cousins I barely knew. Erica and Derek were there with the kids, now 7, 7, and 4. Everyone smiled too hard. The gifts were harmless. Clothes from Target, a generic coffee maker, a gift card to Olive Garden. Then Mom handed me an envelope with a flourish. "This is from all of us." Inside was a brochure. "A beach resort in Mexico. 7 days, all inclusive. We've already paid for everything," Dad said proudly. "The whole family is going." My stomach dropped. I looked at Erica. She smiled that smile, the one that meant she already had plans for me. After the party, when everyone left, Erica casually mentioned they'd already talked to my boss about time off. Mom squeezed my arm hard. "Don't make a scene," she whispered. "Not after we've spent all this money." I drove home that night with my heart pounding. And for the first time, I didn't feel trapped. I felt strategic. The next day, I bought myself a plane ticket. Same dates. Different destination. Adults only. I didn't tell anyone. The 2 weeks before the trip passed in a strange, suspended calm. Outwardly, I played my role. I nodded when my mom called to confirm details. I smiled when Erica texted about swimsuit colors and coordinating outfits for family photos. I listened as she casually talked about how helpful I'd be on the flight, sitting next to Cameron because he hated takeoff, managing snacks so Connor's food didn't touch, keeping Sophia entertained during dinners so she and Derek could actually relax. Inside, I was already gone. I packed quietly. I organized my work deadlines. I paid off as much of my credit card as I could, then used it one last time to buy freedom. I didn't tell my parents. I didn't tell Erica. I didn't even tell Alex. Only hinted that I needed space from my family. Because if I told anyone, they would have stopped me. The day of departure arrived. LAX Terminal 5. My entire family stood together like a traveling circus. Mom with documents neatly stacked, Dad checking passports, Erica wrangling the kids while Derek scrolled on his phone. The moment I arrived, Erica started assigning. Okay, Juliana, she said, not even looking at me. You'll sit with Cameron on the plane. He panics during takeoff, and you'll help with meals. Connor's picky. Oh, and evenings. Derek and I were thinking of doing dinners alone, so I didn't let her finish. Oh, I said suddenly, pressing a hand to my stomach. I need the restroom. Bad. Something I ate. Dad frowned. We're about to check in. I'll be quick, I said, handing my passport and boarding pass to my mom. Just check me in. I'll meet you at the gate. She hesitated, but only for a second, because she trusted that I'd fall in line. I watched them join the check-in line. Erica already stressed, Mom organizing, Dad hovering. Then I turned and walked the other direction. My hands were shaking as I approached a different airline counter. Checking in for Chulam, I told the agent, sliding over my real passport and ticket. 10 minutes later, I was through security. I found a quiet corner near my actual gate and pulled out my phone. My heart hammered as I typed into the family group chat. I'm not coming with you. I'm going on my own vacation. Enjoy your trip. I hit send. Then I turned my phone off. I boarded my flight, ordered a glass of wine, and stared out the window as the plane lifted off, half expecting guilt to grab me by the throat. It didn't. When I landed, I felt lighter than I ever had. The hotel was small, beautiful, and adults only. White walls, ocean air, silence. I unpacked slowly. Then, curiosity won, I turned my phone back on. It exploded. Hundreds of messages, missed calls, voicemails. How could you do this? Mom. You ruined everything. Erica. The kids are devastated. Dad. Extended family chimed in like a jury I never asked for. I smiled, turned my phone back off, and locked it in the hotel safe. The next 7 days were perfect. I read 3 books. I snorkeled in cenotes. I took a cooking class. I danced at beach clubs until 2 a.m. I went on a date with the marine biologist named Jordan. No expectations, no pressure, just laughter and salt air. No schedules, no responsibilities, no one needing me to disappear for their comfort. When I got home, the reckoning came fast. Mom and Erica showed up at my apartment furious. They yelled, they blamed, they demanded repayment. I let them talk. Then I said calmly, I don't owe you anything. I listed everything. The hand-me-down childhood, the minimal college help, the years of unpaid childcare. And I asked one simple question. What exactly have you done for me? They had no answer. I asked them to leave. The weeks after were hard, but different. I went to therapy. I got promoted. I moved into a better apartment. Alex and I broke up. My family drama was too much for him. But I kept going. Now 3 years later, I'm 29. I have boundaries. A career I'm proud of. A life that's mine. My family and I are cordial, nothing more. Sometimes I feel guilty. Then I remember what it felt like to drown. And I forgive myself.